What if I told you that our ancestors faced a predator so massive and deadly that it could tear apart a creature the size of a small car with a single bite? Picture this. You're walking through ancient grasslands, and suddenly the ground trembles beneath your feet. The birds fall silent. Every instinct in your body screams danger, but you can't see what's coming. Then, from the shadows of towering ferns, emerges a lizard longer than a school bus, weighing more than 3 grizzly bears combined, with jaws that could crush bone like we crack walnuts. This isn't some Hollywood monster or mythical dragon from fairy tales. This was real. This was Megalania. And it was the most dangerous predator humans have ever encountered on this planet. Now, before we dive into this incredible story, let me tell you why this matters more than you might think. We're not just talking about some extinct animal that lived millions of years ago. We're talking about a creature that our own species actually encountered. Your ancestors, the first humans to set foot in Australia, looked into the eyes of this beast. They survived its attacks. They told stories about it around campfires. And somehow, incredibly, we're here today because they managed to outlast the world's most formidable land predator. But here's what's going to blow your mind. Everything you think you know about dangerous predators is about to change. We talk about lions, tigers, bears, sharks, but none of them even come close to what Megalania was capable of. This wasn't just a big lizard. This was evolution's perfect killing machine, refined over millions of years into something so efficient at hunting that it dominated an entire continent for longer than our species has existed. I've spent months researching this incredible predator, diving deep into paleontological studies, Aboriginal folklore, and the latest scientific discoveries. What I found will change how you think about prehistoric life forever. We're going to explore not just what made Megalania so deadly, but how it shaped the very landscape of Australia, how it influenced human evolution, and why understanding this creature is crucial to understanding our own survival as a species. And trust me, by the end of this series, you'll understand why some scientists believe that encountering Megalania was one of the defining moments in human history. But first, we need to go back in time, way back, to when giants ruled the earth. Imagine Australia 50,000 years ago. Forget everything you know about the modern continent. This wasn't the dry desert landscape we see today. This was a lush, green paradise teeming with creatures that would make today's wildlife look like house pets. Giant wombats the size of cars roamed the forests. Kangaroos stood 10 feet tall, with claws that could disembowel a predator with a single swipe. Marsupial lions prowled through dense vegetation, and crocodiles that had abandoned water entirely stalked prey across dry land. But ruling over all of these incredible creatures was something even more extraordinary. In the shadows of ancient forests, among the tall grasses of prehistoric plains, lurked the ultimate apex predator. Its scientific name was Varanus priscus, but the world knows it better as Megalania. And when I say it was the ultimate predator, I'm not exaggerating for dramatic effect. This creature was so perfectly designed for killing that it had no natural enemies except for others of its own kind. Let me paint you a picture of just how massive this thing was. Take the longest alligator you can imagine, then double it. Take the heaviest bear you've ever seen, then triple its weight. Now give it the speed of a racehorse, the intelligence of a Komodo dragon, and jaws powerful enough to bite clean through solid bone. That's Megalania. We're talking about a lizard that stretched nearly 20 feet from nose to tail, stood as tall as a person at the shoulder, and weighed as much as a small elephant. But here's where it gets really terrifying. Size wasn't even Megalania's deadliest weapon. This creature had evolved something far more sinister, something that would make its prey suffer in ways that seem almost designed by nature's cruelest imagination. Hidden in its lower jaw were special glands that produced one of the most horrifying toxins ever discovered in the animal kingdom. This wasn't just any venom. This was a hemotoxin specifically engineered to prevent blood from clotting. Think about what that means for a moment. When Megalania bit its prey, the wound wouldn't just hurt and then heal. It would keep bleeding and bleeding and bleeding. The victim would grow weaker and weaker as their life literally drained away, while Megalania simply followed at a distance, waiting for the inevitable collapse. Picture being hunted by such a creature. You're a massive diprotodon, essentially a giant wombat weighing as much as a rhinoceros. You're grazing peacefully when suddenly pain explodes through your flank. You turn to see this enormous lizard, its teeth stained with your blood, watching you with cold, calculating eyes. You try to run, but you're bleeding heavily. Every step becomes more difficult. Your vision starts to blur. You can hear it following behind you, patient as death itself, knowing that time is on its side. This is how Megalania hunted the largest prey animals Australia has ever known. It didn't need to overpower its victims in a dramatic struggle. It was far more efficient than that. One bite, then patience. This hunting strategy was so effective that Megalania could take down animals many times its own size without risking serious injury to itself. But the truly remarkable thing about Megalania wasn't just its individual hunting prowess. It was how completely it dominated its environment. For nearly 1.5 million years, this creature was the undisputed king of Australian ecosystems. Think about that time span for a moment. Modern humans have only existed for about 300,000 years. Megalania ruled Australia for 5 times longer than our entire species has existed. During this incredible reign, Megalania shaped the evolution of every other large animal on the continent. Prey species developed elaborate defense mechanisms specifically to avoid becoming Megalania's next meal. Predators evolved to avoid competing with it for territory. The entire ecosystem revolved around this one incredible creature. And then something changed, something that would alter the course of natural history forever. Around 65,000 years ago, a new predator arrived in Australia. This predator was smaller than Megalania, weaker, slower, and had no natural weapons to speak of. It had no claws, no fangs, no venom, no armor. By every measure that nature uses to judge predators, this newcomer should have been easy prey for Megalania. But this new predator had something that no animal in Australia had ever encountered before. It had intelligence, it had tools, it had fire. It had language and cooperation and the ability to plan for the future. This new predator was us, humans. And somehow, incredibly, We didn't just survive in Megalania's world. We thrived. Now, I want you to really think about what that means. Our ancestors, with nothing but stone tools and wooden spears, entered a continent ruled by a venomous giant lizard that had been perfecting the art of killing for over 1,000,000 years. They not only survived this encounter, they eventually outlasted one of the most successful predators in Earth's history. How did they do it? What strategies did early humans develop to cope with a threat unlike anything they had ever faced? How do you fight a creature that can kill you with a single bite and then track you for days as you slowly bleed to death? These are the questions that have fascinated scientists for decades, and the answers reveal something profound about human nature and our capacity for survival. But before we can understand how humans ultimately triumphed over Megalania, we need to understand exactly what made this creature so formidable in the first place. We need to dive deep into its biology, its behavior, and its hunting strategies. We need to explore the world it inhabited and the prey it hunted. Only then can we truly appreciate the magnitude of what our ancestors accomplished. The discovery of Megalania is itself a story worth telling. For thousands of years, Aboriginal Australians passed down stories of giant lizards that could swallow entire tribes in a single gulp. European colonists dismissed these tales as mythology, the kind of exaggerated stories that primitive peoples tell around campfires. They couldn't have been more wrong. In 1859, Sir Richard Owen, one of Britain's most respected naturalists, received a package from Australia that would change paleontology forever. Inside were 3 enormous vertebrae, unlike anything he had ever seen. They were clearly from a reptile, but they were far too large to belong to any known species. Owen realized he was looking at evidence of a creature that dwarfed every land predator known to science. He named it Megalania, meaning great roamer. And suddenly, those Aboriginal stories didn't seem so mythical anymore. Here was scientific proof that giant predatory lizards had indeed roamed Australia within human memory. The implications were staggering. If these creatures had existed recently enough for humans to encounter them, what did that say about the history of human settlement in Australia? As more fossils were discovered, the picture of Megalania became clearer and more terrifying. This wasn't just a large monitor lizard. This was something unprecedented in the history of life on Earth. No terrestrial lizard before or since has approached Megalania's size and hunting capabilities. It represented the absolute peak of reptilian predator evolution. The fossils revealed a creature built like a tank, but capable of moving with surprising speed and agility. Its legs were thick and powerful, designed to support massive weight while still allowing for rapid acceleration when attacking prey. Its tail was enormously long and heavy, serving as both a weapon and a counterbalance for its massive head and jaws. But it was the skull that truly revealed Megalania's nature as a super predator. The jaw was designed for maximum bite force, with attachment points for massive muscles that could generate crushing pressure. The teeth were not just large, they were serrated like steak knives, perfectly designed for slicing through hide, muscle, and bone. Every aspect of Megalania's anatomy screamed one thing: this creature existed to kill, and it was extraordinarily good at its job. As paleontologists continued to study Megalania fossils, they began to piece together a picture of how this incredible predator lived and hunted. The evidence suggested a creature of remarkable intelligence and patience, one that could adapt its hunting strategies to different types of prey and different environmental conditions. Megalania inhabited a variety of ecosystems across eastern and southern Australia. Fossil evidence shows it lived in open woodlands, grasslands, and forest edges, environments that provided both cover for ambush hunting and open spaces for pursuing fleeing prey. This adaptability was key to its success. Unlike modern crocodiles, which are restricted to aquatic environments, or big cats, which prefer specific types of terrain, Megalania could thrive almost anywhere. This environmental flexibility allowed Megalania to exploit an enormous range of prey species. The fossil record shows evidence of it hunting everything from giant marsupials to massive flightless birds. No herbivore was safe from Megalania's attention, regardless of size or defensive capabilities. The hunting strategy that emerged from studying Megalania's anatomy and prey remains was both simple and terrifyingly effective. Using its powerful legs and surprising speed, Megalania would ambush prey animals, delivering a devastating bite and then retreating to a safe distance. The venom would do the rest of the work, ensuring that even the largest and most dangerous prey would eventually succumb. This patient hunting style meant that Megalania rarely had to engage in prolonged, dangerous struggles with its prey. Unlike modern big cats, which must maintain physical contact with struggling prey animals and risk injury from horns, claws, or powerful kicks, Megalania could deliver its lethal bite and then simply wait for the inevitable outcome. This strategy was so successful that it allowed Megalania to dominate prey animals that would seem impossible to hunt. Consider the Diprotodon, a marsupial that weighed over 5,000 pounds and stood nearly 7 feet tall at the shoulder. This was essentially a giant wombat with the mass of a small elephant, equipped with powerful limbs and a thick protective hide. Any modern predator would think twice before attacking such a formidable creature, but Megalania didn't think twice. It had evolved specifically to handle prey of this magnitude. The fossil evidence shows clear bite marks on Diprotodon bones, proof that these titanic battles actually took place in prehistoric Australia. Imagine witnessing such an encounter, a 20-foot lizard stalking a creature the size of a small car, calculating the perfect moment to strike. The attack would have been lightning fast. Despite its massive size, Megalania could accelerate with shocking speed when necessary. Its powerful hind limbs would propel it forward like a scaly missile, closing the distance to its target in seconds. The Diprotodon, despite its bulk and strength, would have little chance to react before those serrated teeth found their mark. Once bitten, the Diprotodon's fate was sealed. The hemotoxic venom would begin its deadly work immediately, preventing the blood from clotting and ensuring continuous bleeding. But here's what makes this even more terrifying. Megalania didn't need to deliver a killing bite to vital organs. Any significant wound would eventually prove fatal, giving this predator an enormous margin for error that no modern hunter enjoys. This hunting method was so efficient that Megalania could afford to be selective about its prey. evidence suggests it targeted the largest, most nutritious animals available, ignoring smaller creatures that other predators would gladly pursue. This was apex predation taken to its logical extreme. A creature so perfectly adapted to killing that it could choose its victims based purely on preference rather than necessity. But Diprotodon wasn't the only giant that fell prey to Megalania's hunting prowess. The continent was home to Procoptodon, the largest kangaroo species ever discovered. Standing over 6 feet tall and weighing as much as a large horse, these creatures possessed incredibly powerful hind legs capable of delivering bone-crushing kicks. Their claws were like daggers, and their speed across open ground was remarkable. Yet even these formidable marsupials lived in constant fear of Megalania. Fossil evidence shows that Procoptodon developed specific behavioral adaptations to avoid predation. They traveled in larger groups than modern kangaroos, maintained constant vigilance while feeding, and avoided certain types of terrain where ambush predators might lurk. Think about what this tells us about Megalania's impact on its ecosystem. This wasn't just a predator that occasionally picked off weak or injured animals. This was a creature so dangerous that it fundamentally altered the behavior of every large animal on the continent. Prey species evolved elaborate warning systems, changed their feeding patterns, and modified their social structures, all in response to the threat posed by this incredible lizard. The psychological impact of Megalania's presence must have been enormous. Modern prey animals show stress responses to predator scents that can last for hours or even days. Imagine the constant state of alert that Australian megafauna must have maintained, knowing that a creature capable of killing them with a single bite could emerge from cover at any moment. This brings us to one of the most fascinating aspects of Megalania's hunting behavior, its intelligence. Modern monitor lizards, Megalania's closest living relatives, display remarkable problem-solving abilities and complex hunting strategies. They can plan ahead, remember the locations of prey animals, and adapt their tactics based on experience. All evidence suggests that Megalania possessed these cognitive abilities to an even greater degree. Picture how this intelligence might have manifested in hunting behavior. Megalania could potentially remember the feeding patterns of different prey species, learning when and where they were most vulnerable. It might have tracked the movements of herds across seasonal ranges, positioning itself along migration routes for maximum hunting success. This wasn't just a mindless eating machine, but a calculating predator, capable of sophisticated strategic thinking. The fossil record provides tantalizing hints of this intelligence in action. Megalania remains have been found in locations that suggest deliberate positioning for ambush hunting. Bone accumulations indicate that individuals may have returned repeatedly to successful hunting grounds, showing both memory and planning capabilities that would have made them incredibly effective predators. But intelligence alone doesn't explain Megalania's extraordinary success. This creature also possessed physical capabilities that seem almost supernatural by today's standards. Its bite force has been estimated at over 4,000 pounds per square inch, more than enough to crush the skull of any prey animal. To put this in perspective, that's twice the bite force of a great white shark, and significantly more than any modern crocodile. Combined with its venomous bite, this crushing power made Megalania's jaws the most dangerous weapons in prehistoric Australia. A single snap of those massive jaws could shatter bone, tear through muscle, and inject enough toxin to kill creatures many times Megalania's own size. No defensive strategy employed by prey animals could reliably protect against such overwhelming offensive capability. The venom itself deserves special attention because it represents one of evolution's most diabolical innovations. Unlike neurotoxins that kill quickly by shutting down the nervous system, hemotoxins create a prolonged, agonizing death. The victim remains conscious and aware as their strength gradually ebbs away. For a predator like Megalania, this type of venom offered distinct advantages beyond simple lethality. First, it meant that prey animals couldn't fight back effectively after being bitten. Even the most powerful and aggressive creatures would find their strength diminishing rapidly, making them unable to mount a sustained defense. Second, it allowed Megalania to track wounded prey over long distances without losing them. The continuous bleeding created an easy trail to follow, even through dense vegetation. Perhaps most importantly, the hemotoxic venom served as a force multiplier, allowing a single Megalania to potentially take down multiple prey animals in a short period. While waiting for one victim to succumb, it could attack others, building up a reserve of dying prey that would provide food for days or weeks. This hunting efficiency was crucial for a predator of Megalania's size. Large predators face constant energy challenges, needing enormous amounts of food to maintain their massive bodies. Megalania's venom-based hunting strategy allowed it to secure far more food with far less energy expenditure than would be possible through conventional predation methods. The implications of this hunting strategy extend far beyond simple predator-prey relationships. Megalania's presence would have created cascading effects throughout the entire ecosystem. Large herbivores, constantly under threat, would have had to spend more time and energy on vigilance and defense, potentially affecting their reproductive success and population dynamics. Smaller predators would have found themselves competing not just for prey, but for territory that wasn't already claimed by Megalania. The fossil record suggests that other carnivorous species avoided areas where Megalania was active, leading to complex patterns of spatial and temporal segregation among predator species. Even scavenging opportunities would have been dominated by Megalania's presence. Its massive size and aggressive nature meant that it could easily drive other scavengers away from carcasses, claiming first access to any available carrion. This monopolization of food resources would have further concentrated predatory power in the hands of this single species. But perhaps the most remarkable aspect of Megalania's ecological dominance was its longevity. For over 1 million years, this creature maintained its position as Australia's apex predator. Think about what that means in evolutionary terms. Entire species evolved and went extinct, while Megalania continued its reign of terror across the continent. This extraordinary persistence suggests that Megalania had achieved something close to evolutionary perfection as a large terrestrial predator. It had found an ecological niche that was both sustainable and virtually unassailable by any other species. Its combination of size, intelligence, venom, and hunting efficiency created a competitive advantage so overwhelming that no other predator could successfully challenge its dominance. Now, the stability of Megalania's position in Australian ecosystems also indicates remarkable adaptability to changing environmental conditions. Over the course of 1,000,000 years, Australia experienced significant climate fluctuations, changes in vegetation patterns, and the evolution of new prey species. Through all of these changes, Megalania not only survived, but thrived, suggesting an ability to modify its hunting strategies and habitat preferences as needed. This adaptability would prove crucial when Megalania faced its ultimate challenge, the arrival of humans in Australia. Unlike the environmental changes and evolutionary pressures that Megalania had successfully navigated for 1,000,000 years, human colonization represented something entirely unprecedented in the creature's evolutionary experience. The first humans to reach Australia brought with them capabilities that no previous species had possessed. They could communicate complex information across generations, coordinate group activities with unprecedented precision, and modify their environment in ways that went far beyond simple habitat selection. Most importantly, they could learn and adapt far more rapidly than any biological evolutionary process. When these two apex predators finally encountered each other, the stage was set for one of the most significant confrontations in natural history. On one side stood Megalania, the product of millions of years of evolutionary refinement, perfectly adapted to dominate the Australian landscape through raw physical power and biological weaponry. On the other side stood early humans, physically inferior in almost every measurable way, but armed with intelligence, cooperation, and technology that represented an entirely new category of survival strategy. The outcome of this confrontation would determine not just the fate of Megalania, but the future trajectory of human evolution and the ecological structure of an entire continent. What happened when these two predatory species met would echo through history and fundamentally reshape our understanding of what it means to be human. The confrontation between humans and Megalania wasn't just a clash between two species. It was a collision between two completely different approaches to survival that had never before existed on the same continent. For the first time in Megalania's 1,000,000-year reign, it faced an opponent that didn't play by the rules of natural selection. But here's what makes this story even more incredible. The humans who first encountered Megalania weren't modern humans with advanced technology. These were our earliest ancestors, people who had never seen metal, never built permanent structures, never developed agriculture. They survived with nothing but their wits, basic stone tools, and an extraordinary capacity for cooperation that no other species had ever achieved. Think about the sheer audacity of what these early humans accomplished. They looked at a continent ruled by venomous giants and decided to make it their home. They didn't just survive in Megalania's world. They fundamentally changed the rules of that world. And the way they did it reveals something profound about human nature that still defines us today. The fossil evidence tells us that humans and Megalania coexisted for several thousand years. This wasn't a brief encounter or a single dramatic confrontation. This was an extended period where two apex predators shared the same hunting grounds, competed for the same resources, and developed strategies specifically designed to deal with each other. During this time, humans developed technologies and behaviors that had never existed before. They created sophisticated spear-throwing devices that could deliver projectiles with deadly accuracy from distances far beyond Megalania's striking range. They learned to use fire not just for warmth and cooking, but as a weapon and a tool for landscape modification. Most importantly, they developed communication systems that allowed them to share crucial survival information across entire populations. Imagine being part of one of these early human communities. Your survival depends not just on your individual skills, but on your ability to work seamlessly with others in your group. Everyone has a role to play in the complex strategies needed to avoid or confront Megalania. Scouts track the creature's movements and warn of its presence. Hunters coordinate their attacks with precision timing. Elders share knowledge about Megalania's behavior patterns that could mean the difference between life and death. This level of cooperation was something completely new in the natural world. Other social animals work together, but not with the conscious planning and strategic thinking that early humans brought to their survival challenges. They could discuss hypothetical scenarios, plan for future encounters, and modify their strategies based on accumulated experience. This gave them a massive advantage over a solitary predator like Megalania, no matter how powerful that predator might be. But the most revolutionary aspect of human survival strategy was their ability to modify their environment. While other animals adapted to their surroundings through evolutionary changes that took thousands of generations, humans could alter their surroundings within a single generation to better suit their needs. The use of fire was particularly devastating to Megalania's hunting success. Early humans discovered that controlled burns could dramatically change vegetation patterns, creating open areas where large predators couldn't approach unseen. They learned to burn specific areas during certain seasons, driving prey animals toward predetermined locations while simultaneously eliminating Megalania's ambush opportunities. This wasn't random fire use. Archaeological evidence suggests that early humans developed sophisticated fire management techniques that required detailed knowledge of wind patterns, seasonal changes, and animal behavior. They could essentially redesign entire landscapes to favor human survival while making life increasingly difficult for large predators. The psychological impact of human fire use on Megalania and other large predators can't be overstated. Fire represented something completely outside their evolutionary experience. Unlike other environmental challenges they had faced, fire was unpredictable, could spread rapidly, and created lasting changes to familiar territory. For creatures that relied on intimate knowledge of their hunting grounds, these human-caused landscape modifications would have been profoundly disorienting. Meanwhile, humans were developing increasingly sophisticated hunting techniques specifically designed to deal with large, dangerous predators. They learned to hunt in coordinated groups using complex tactical formations that allowed them to attack from multiple directions simultaneously. They developed specialized weapons designed to penetrate thick hide and deliver maximum damage from a safe distance. But perhaps most importantly, they learned to think like their predators. Early humans studied Megalania's behavior with the same intensity that modern scientists bring to their research. They identified patterns in its movement, weakness in its hunting strategies, and vulnerabilities in its physical structure. This knowledge became part of their cultural inheritance, passed down through generations and constantly refined through experience. The evidence suggests that humans eventually developed specific techniques for hunting Megalania itself. Bone tools found at archaeological sites show modifications that could have been used to process giant lizard remains. Rock art from later periods depicts large reptilian creatures being hunted by groups of human figures. These aren't just random images. They're instructional diagrams showing successful hunting strategies. Think about what this means. Humans didn't just learn to avoid Megalania. They learned to hunt it. They transformed themselves from potential prey into active predators of one of the most dangerous creatures that had ever lived. This represents a complete reversal of the traditional predator-prey relationship and demonstrates the incredible adaptability of early human intelligence. The hunting of Megalania required courage that's almost impossible to comprehend by modern standards. These early humans had to approach a creature that could kill them with a single bite, using only primitive weapons and their ability to work together. They had to overcome every instinct that told them to flee from such a dangerous predator, and instead develop the confidence to actively pursue it. But humans weren't just fighting Megalania directly. They were waging a much more subtle and ultimately more effective campaign against the entire ecosystem that supported large predators. By systematically hunting the large herbivores that Megalania depended on for food, humans were undermining the foundation of the predator's survival. This wasn't accidental. Archaeological evidence suggests that early humans specifically targeted the largest available prey animals, the same species that formed the core of Megalania's diet. Giant marsupials like Diprotodon and Procoptodon, which had coexisted with Megalania for hundreds of thousands of years, began disappearing from the fossil record shortly after human arrival. The hunting pressure that humans could bring to bear on these large herbivores was unlike anything these species had ever experienced. Unlike Megalania, which was a solitary hunter that took prey occasionally, humans hunted in groups, could pursue prey over long distances, and had the technology to kill animals efficiently and safely. More importantly, human hunting strategies were sustainable in ways that Megalania's were not. While Megalania needed to maintain a careful balance between energy expenditure and caloric intake, humans could afford to hunt more aggressively because they could process and preserve food in ways that no other predator could manage. They could smoke meat extract marrow from bones, and utilize parts of carcasses that other predators would ignore. This efficiency allowed human populations to grow rapidly while simultaneously depleting the food sources that large predators needed to survive. It was a double impact. More humans meant more hunting pressure on prey species, while fewer prey animals meant less food available for creatures like Megalania. The climate was changing as well, adding another layer of pressure on large predators. Australia was becoming drier and more arid, conditions that favored smaller, more adaptable species over massive creatures that required enormous amounts of food and water. But while climate change created challenges for all large species, humans were uniquely equipped to adapt to these changing conditions. They could modify their hunting strategies to target different prey species as populations shifted. They could change their settlement patterns to follow water sources and food availability. Most importantly, they could share information about successful adaptations across their entire population, allowing beneficial innovations to spread much faster than would be possible through genetic inheritance. Megalania, despite its million years of evolutionary success, lacked this adaptability. It was locked into hunting strategies and habitat requirements that had served it well during stable periods but became liabilities during times of rapid change, when its primary prey species began disappearing and its hunting grounds were altered by human fire management. Megalania found itself increasingly unable to find adequate food. The final blow came from Megalania's own biology. Large predators reproduce slowly, with long intervals between generations and small numbers of offspring. When populations begin declining, recovery is a slow process that requires stable conditions and abundant food sources. Humans, with their rapid population growth and increasing technological sophistication, could maintain pressure on Megalania populations faster than the species could recover. Archaeological sites from this period tell a story of gradual human expansion and increasing technological sophistication. Tool assemblages become more diverse and specialized. Settlement patterns show longer occupation periods and more complex site organization. Rock art begins to appear, documenting human experiences and knowledge in permanent form. Meanwhile, Megalania fossils become increasingly rare in the archaeological record. The latest confirmed remains date to around 50,000 years ago, suggesting that the species survived for only about 15,000 years after the first human arrival. In evolutionary terms, this is an incredibly rapid extinction for a species that had been so successful for so long. But the disappearance of Megalania wasn't just the end of one species. It marked a fundamental shift in how ecosystems function and how evolution shapes predator-prey relationships. For the first time in Earth's history, intelligence and technology had proven more powerful than size, strength, and biological weaponry. The implications of this shift extend far beyond prehistoric Australia. Human success against Megalania established patterns of behavior and technological development that would eventually allow our species to dominate every ecosystem on Earth. The strategies that early humans developed to survive in Megalania's world became the foundation for all subsequent human expansion and technological advancement. Consider the psychological impact this victory must have had on early human communities. They had faced down the most dangerous predator in their world and emerged victorious. This success would have provided enormous confidence for future challenges and established humans as the dominant species on the Australian continent. But the story of humans versus Megalania also reveals something troubling about our species. The same capabilities that allowed us to survive against this incredible predator also enabled us to drive it to extinction. Our ancestors didn't just learn to coexist with Megalania, they learned to eliminate it entirely. This pattern would repeat itself throughout human history as our species spread across the globe. Wherever humans arrived, large predators and megafauna disappeared. The mammoth, the saber-toothed cat, the cave bear, the giant ground sloth, all fell victim to the same combination of human intelligence, technology, and ecological disruption that had doomed Megalania. The extinction of Megalania represents both humanity's greatest triumph and perhaps our most cautionary tale. It demonstrates our incredible capacity for survival and adaptation, but it also shows our tendency to completely transform the ecosystems we inhabit. The same intelligence that saved our ancestors from becoming Megalania's prey ultimately led to the disappearance of one of evolution's most remarkable achievements. Modern Aboriginal Australian cultures preserve memories of this ancient confrontation in their oral traditions and artwork. Stories of giant lizards that could swallow entire tribes reflect genuine cultural memories of encounters with Megalania. These aren't just myths or legends. They're historical accounts passed down through hundreds of generations, maintaining the memory of humanity's most dangerous adversary. The accuracy of these oral traditions has been confirmed by paleontological discoveries that match the descriptions found in Aboriginal stories. The size, behavior, and habitat preferences described in traditional accounts align remarkably well with what scientists have learned from fossil evidence. This suggests that human memory of Megalania has persisted for 50,000 years, making it one of the longest continuous historical records in human culture. These cultural memories also reveal the profound impact that Megalania had on early human psychology and social development. The stories don't just describe a large predator. They describe a creature that fundamentally shaped how humans understood danger, cooperation, and survival. The strategies developed to deal with Megalania became embedded in human culture and continue to influence how we approach threats and challenges today. The legacy of humanity's confrontation with Megalania can be seen in our modern behavior patterns. Our tendency to work together when facing common threats, our development of increasingly sophisticated weapons and tools, our ability to modify our environment to suit our needs, all of these characteristics were refined and perfected during our species' struggle against the world's most dangerous predator. Understanding this ancient confrontation also helps explain some of the more puzzling aspects of human psychology. Our deep-seated fear of large reptiles, our instinctive response to coordinate group defense against threats, our drive to develop ever more powerful technologies. All of these traits make more sense when viewed as evolutionary responses to facing creatures like Megalania. The scientific study of Megalania continues to reveal new insights about this incredible predator and its relationship with early humans. Advanced imaging techniques applied to fossil remains have provided detailed information about the creature's anatomy and hunting capabilities. Chemical analysis of ancient bones has revealed details about its diet and metabolism that help explain its ecological dominance. New archaeological discoveries continue to shed light on how early humans adapted to life in Megalania's world. Stone tool assemblages show increasingly sophisticated designs optimized for hunting large, dangerous prey. Fire management techniques become more complex and widespread over time. Settlement patterns reveal strategic positioning that suggests detailed knowledge of predator behavior and movement patterns. Perhaps most importantly, genetic studies of modern Aboriginal Australian populations have revealed traces of the selection pressures that shaped human evolution during the period of coexistence with Megalania. Certain genetic variants that enhance reaction time, improve night vision, or increase resistance to toxins show evidence of positive selection during this crucial period in human history. The story of Megalania also provides important lessons for modern conservation efforts. The rapid extinction of such a successful predator demonstrates how quickly even the most dominant species can disappear when faced with unprecedented challenges. Climate change, habitat modification, and competition from invasive species can combine to overwhelm even the most well-adapted organisms. But there's also hope in this story. The same intelligence and adaptability that allowed humans to survive against Megalania can potentially be applied to protecting endangered species today. Understanding how ecosystems respond to the loss of apex predators can help guide conservation strategies for modern threatened species. The techniques that early humans developed for coexisting with dangerous predators could also inform modern human-wildlife conflict resolution. Learning to understand predator behavior, modify human activity patterns, and use technology to reduce dangerous encounters, while maintaining ecological balance, are skills that remain relevant today. As we continue to uncover new evidence about Megalania and its relationship with early humans, we gain deeper insights into what makes our species unique. The confrontation with this incredible predator helped forge the characteristics that define humanity. Our capacity for cooperation, our technological innovation, our ability to adapt rapidly to new challenges, and our power to reshape entire ecosystems. But we also learn about the responsibilities that come with such power. The extinction of Megalania reminds us that human success often comes at a cost to other species and ecosystems. As we face modern environmental challenges, the lessons learned from our ancient confrontation with the world's most dangerous predator become increasingly relevant. The story of humans versus Megalania is ultimately a story about the power of intelligence over brute force, cooperation over individual strength, and adaptability over specialization. It's a story that helps explain how our species came to dominate the planet and what that dominance means for the future of life on Earth. The evidence of this ancient struggle between humans and Megalania can be found written in stone, quite literally. Rock art sites across northern Australia contain depictions that send chills down the spine of anyone who understands what they're looking at. These aren't just primitive drawings or abstract symbols. These are tactical diagrams, survival manuals carved into stone by people who faced death every single day. Look closely at these ancient images and you'll see something remarkable. Groups of human figures surrounding massive reptilian shapes, spears positioned at specific angles, fire being used in coordinated patterns. These aren't random artistic expressions. These are instruction manuals, created by people who had learned through bitter experience exactly how to survive encounters with creatures that could end their lives in seconds. But here's what's truly extraordinary about these rock art sites. They show evolution in real time. The earliest depictions show humans fleeing from giant lizards, running in terror from creatures they couldn't hope to fight. But as you move through the chronological sequence, the images change dramatically. Humans start appearing with tools, then with coordinated group formations, then finally as the hunters rather than the hunted. This artistic progression tells the story of humanity's greatest transformation. We went from being potential prey to becoming the ultimate predator, and we did it faster than any species in the history of life on Earth. The same intelligence that creates beautiful art also created the strategies that allowed us to survive against impossible odds. Archaeological sites from this period reveal the incredible ingenuity of early human survival strategies. Tool caches hidden in strategic locations across the landscape show that our ancestors were thinking several steps ahead, preparing for encounters that might not happen for months or years. They were playing a game of survival chess against an opponent that had been perfecting its moves for 1,000,000 years. The sophistication of these preparation strategies is mind-blowing. Humans learned to create backup plans for their backup plans. If their primary hunting weapons failed, they had secondary options. If their escape routes were blocked, they had alternative paths mapped out. If their usual food sources were depleted, they knew exactly where to find emergency supplies. This level of strategic thinking was completely unprecedented in the natural world. Other animals might cache food or remember the locations of water sources, but no species had ever developed contingency planning on the scale that early humans achieved. They were essentially running complex military operations against a single, incredibly dangerous opponent. The psychological warfare aspect of this ancient conflict is particularly fascinating. Humans discovered that they could use Megalania's own intelligence against it. By creating false trails, setting up decoy camps, and using controlled fires to mask their actual movements, they could confuse and misdirect a predator that had never encountered deceptive tactics before. Think about how revolutionary this was. For millions of years, predator-prey interactions had been based on straightforward physical capabilities. Speed versus speed, strength versus strength, camouflage versus detection. Suddenly, humans introduced an entirely new element: deception. They could make Megalania think they were in one location, while actually being somewhere completely different. This psychological dimension of the conflict extended beyond simple misdirection. Humans began using sound as a weapon, creating noise patterns that would disturb Megalania's hunting routines. They learned to mimic the distress calls of prey animals, potentially luring the giant lizard into disadvantageous positions. Most cleverly, they figured out how to exploit Megalania's own territorial instincts against it. The fossil record suggests that humans may have deliberately triggered conflicts between different Megalania individuals by manipulating territorial boundaries. By leaving scent trails or carcass remains in contested areas, they could potentially cause these massive predators to fight each other, rather than focus on hunting humans. This divide-and-conquer strategy shows a level of strategic thinking that seems almost impossibly sophisticated for Stone Age peoples. But perhaps the most ingenious human innovation was their development of what we might call early warning systems. Networks of lookout points positioned across the landscape allowed human communities to track Megalania movements over vast distances. These weren't just random observation posts. They were carefully planned surveillance networks that provided overlapping coverage of crucial territory. The engineering involved in creating these warning systems was remarkable. Humans learned to identify the optimal positions for maximum visibility, while maintaining concealment from ground-level predators. They developed signaling systems using smoke, reflected light, and sound that could communicate complex information across miles of terrain in minutes. These communication networks gave humans a massive tactical advantage over a solitary predator like Megalania. While the giant lizard could only be aware of what was happening in its immediate vicinity, human communities could coordinate their activities across entire regions. They could track multiple Megalania individuals simultaneously, predict their movement patterns, and plan their own activities to avoid dangerous encounters. The sophistication of early human logistics during this period is absolutely staggering. They developed supply chains that could support hunting expeditions lasting weeks or months. They created equipment maintenance protocols that ensured their weapons and tools remained in peak condition despite constant use. They established medical procedures for treating injuries that would have been fatal without intervention. Consider what this means from a technological perspective. Humans were essentially running complex military campaigns using nothing but Stone Age technology. They had to solve problems of communication, supply, reconnaissance, and tactical coordination that modern armies address with sophisticated electronic equipment. And they had to do it while being hunted by creatures that could kill them instantly if they made a single mistake. The medical knowledge that early humans developed during this period represents one of their most remarkable achievements. Treating injuries inflicted by Megalania required understanding of anatomy, toxicology, and emergency medicine that wouldn't seem out of place in a modern trauma center. They learned to neutralize venom, stop massive bleeding, and treat infected wounds using only natural materials. Archaeological evidence shows that early human communities developed specialized roles for individuals with medical expertise. These weren't just generalists who happened to know some healing techniques. These were specialists who devoted their lives to understanding how to save people who had been attacked by the world's most dangerous predator. The surgical techniques that these early medical specialists developed were remarkably advanced. Stone tools found at archaeological sites show modifications that could only have been used for precise medical procedures. Bone needles suggest sophisticated suturing techniques. Chemical residues on grinding stones indicate the preparation of complex medicinal compounds. But here's what's truly remarkable about early human medical knowledge during this period. They didn't just learn to treat injuries after they occurred. They developed preventive medicine specifically designed to help people survive Megalania encounters. They created protective clothing using tough animal hides, developed antidotes for venom exposure, and established fitness regimens that improved survival chances during dangerous encounters. This preventive approach to medicine shows the same forward-thinking mentality that characterized all human survival strategies during this period. Rather than simply reacting to threats as they arose, humans learned to anticipate problems and prepare solutions in advance. This proactive mindset gave them enormous advantages over reactive predators like Megalania. The social changes that occurred in human communities during this period were equally revolutionary. The constant threat posed by Megalania forced humans to develop unprecedented levels of cooperation and coordination. Individual survival became impossible without group support, leading to social structures that prioritized collective success over personal advantage. These weren't just loose associations of individuals who happened to live in the same area. These were highly organized societies with complex hierarchies, specialized roles, and sophisticated decision-making processes. Leadership positions were based on demonstrated ability to make life-or-death decisions under extreme pressure. Social status was determined by contributions to group survival rather than individual achievements. The educational systems that developed during this period were unlike anything that had existed before. Children weren't just taught basic survival skills. They received comprehensive training in tactical thinking, group coordination, tool manufacture, medical procedures, and psychological warfare techniques. By adolescence, every member of the community was essentially a specialist in anti-predator warfare. This intensive educational approach created human communities with collective knowledge and capabilities that far exceeded what any individual could achieve alone. Each person was simultaneously a scout, hunter, medic, toolmaker, and tactical planner. The redundancy built into these skill sets ensured that communities could continue functioning even after losing key individuals to predator attacks. The technological innovations that emerged from this period of intense selective pressure were absolutely extraordinary. Humans developed composite weapons that combined multiple materials for maximum effectiveness. They created portable tools that could be rapidly assembled for different purposes. They invented camouflage techniques that could make entire groups invisible to predators with incredibly acute senses. But perhaps most importantly, they developed technologies for rapidly sharing information across their communities. Standardized symbols, gesture languages, and vocal codes allowed complex tactical information to be communicated instantly, even in high-stress situations. These communication technologies were as crucial to human survival as any physical weapon or tool. The speed at which humans developed these innovations is almost incomprehensible. In just a few thousand years, they went from being helpless prey to possessing technological capabilities that made them the most effective predators on the continent. This rate of innovation was thousands of times faster than normal evolutionary adaptation, giving humans capabilities that biological evolution could never have achieved. The psychological transformation that occurred in human communities during this period was equally profound. Constant exposure to mortal danger created individuals with mental toughness and situational awareness that seems almost superhuman by modern standards. These weren't just brave people. These were individuals who had been forged by circumstances that would break most modern humans completely. Archaeological evidence suggests that early human communities developed sophisticated psychological support systems for dealing with the constant stress of living under threat. Ritual practices, group ceremonies, and cultural traditions all served to maintain mental health and group cohesion despite the incredible pressures they faced daily. The artistic and cultural expressions that emerged during this period reflect both the terror and the triumph of human survival against impossible odds. Music, dance, storytelling, and visual art all became ways of processing traumatic experiences while simultaneously preserving crucial survival information for future generations. These cultural innovations weren't just entertainment or self-expression. They were survival technologies as important as any physical tool or weapon. Stories that encoded tactical information, songs that helped maintain group coordination, and dances that practiced emergency procedures all served crucial functions in keeping communities alive and functional. The spiritual and philosophical developments that occurred during this period laid the foundation for all subsequent human religious and philosophical traditions. Facing death on a daily basis forced early humans to grapple with fundamental questions about the meaning of existence, the nature of courage, and the value of sacrifice for the greater good. The belief systems that emerged from these contemplations weren't abstract philosophical exercises. They were practical frameworks for making life or death decisions under extreme pressure. They provided the mental and emotional tools necessary for individuals to function effectively in situations where a single moment of hesitation or doubt could result in their own death or the destruction of their entire community. The legacy of these ancient belief systems can still be seen in modern human psychology and culture. Our concepts of heroism, sacrifice, and moral duty all trace back to the practical necessities of survival in Megalania's world. The values that we consider most fundamentally human were forged in the crucible of humanity's greatest test. As human communities became more successful at surviving Megalania encounters, they began to develop offensive capabilities that went beyond simple defense. They learned to hunt these massive predators actively, turning the tables on creatures that had never before faced organized opposition from their prey. The hunting techniques that humans developed for taking down Megalania were masterpieces of tactical planning and execution. Multiple coordinated groups would work together to drive the giant lizard into predetermined locations where its mobility would be restricted. Specialized weapons designed specifically for penetrating thick reptilian hide would be deployed with precision timing from multiple angles simultaneously. But the most remarkable aspect of these hunting expeditions was their psychological dimension. Humans had to overcome every instinct that told them to flee from such a dangerous predator and instead develop the mental toughness necessary to actively pursue it. This required a level of courage and determination that represents one of the highest achievements of human psychological development. The success of these hunting expeditions had profound effects on human self-perception and cultural identity. Communities that successfully killed Megalania individuals gained enormous prestige and confidence. The weapons, tools, and body parts taken from these hunts became powerful symbols of human capability and technological achievement. More importantly, each successful hunt provided crucial information about Megalania anatomy, behavior, and vulnerabilities that could be applied to future encounters. Humans were essentially conducting scientific research on their most dangerous adversary, accumulating knowledge that made subsequent hunts more effective and less dangerous. The processing of Megalania carcasses after successful hunts reveals the incredible efficiency and resourcefulness of early human communities. Every part of the animal was utilized for some purpose. Meat provided protein for extended periods. Hide was processed into protective equipment and tools. Bones were carved into weapons and implements. Even the venom glands were studied and potentially used for coating weapons. This comprehensive utilization of resources shows the same strategic thinking that characterized all human activities during this period. Nothing was wasted. Every advantage was exploited, and every opportunity for learning was pursued. These communities were operating at peak efficiency because anything less than perfection could result in extinction. The knowledge gained from processing Megalania remains also contributed to human understanding of anatomy, toxicology, and material science. Early humans became experts in working with tough materials, understanding chemical processes, and manipulating biological systems. These skills would prove invaluable as humans continued to expand into new environments and face new challenges. The transformation of humans from prey to predator during this period represents one of the most remarkable reversals in natural history. In just a few thousand years, humans completely inverted their relationship with the most dangerous creature on their continent. This achievement required innovations in technology, tactics, psychology, and social organization that established patterns of human behavior that persist to this day. But the victory over Megalania came at a cost that early humans probably didn't fully understand at the time. By eliminating such a dominant predator, they were fundamentally altering the ecological balance of an entire continent. The cascading effects of Megalania's extinction would reshape Australian ecosystems in ways that are still being felt today. The disappearance of Megalania removed the primary selective pressure that had shaped the evolution of Australian megafauna for over 1 million years. Prey species that had developed elaborate anti-predator adaptations suddenly found themselves without a major threat. Smaller predators that had been excluded from prime territories by Megalania's presence could now expand their ranges and increase their populations. These ecological changes created new opportunities for human expansion and population growth. With the elimination of their most dangerous competitor, human communities could occupy territories that had previously been too risky to inhabit. They could pursue hunting strategies that would have been suicidal in Megalania's presence. They could establish permanent settlements in locations that offered strategic advantages for future expansion. The success against Megalania also provided humans with confidence and capabilities that would prove crucial as they continued to spread across the globe. The technologies, tactics, and social structures developed during this ancient conflict became the foundation for human expansion into every environment on Earth. As human populations grew and spread across Australia, they encountered other dangerous predators and challenging environments. But armed with the knowledge and capabilities gained from their struggle against Megalania, these subsequent challenges seemed manageable by comparison. Nothing they would encounter in their future expansion would match the sheer lethality and intelligence of the creature they had already defeated. The story of human survival against Megalania ultimately represents the moment when our species crossed a crucial threshold in its development. We transformed from just another animal trying to survive in nature's harsh environment into something entirely new, a species capable of reshaping the natural world to suit our needs and purposes. This transformation didn't happen overnight, and it didn't happen without cost. The same capabilities that allowed humans to triumph over Megalania would eventually lead to the extinction of megafauna on every continent we colonized. The intelligence and technology that saved our ancestors from becoming prey would ultimately give us the power to alter entire planetary systems. Understanding this ancient confrontation helps us appreciate both the remarkable achievements of our species and the enormous responsibilities that come with our current position as Earth's dominant life form. The lessons learned from humanity's greatest test remain relevant as we face modern challenges that require the same combination of intelligence, cooperation, and technological innovation that once saved us from the world's most dangerous predator. The legacy of Megalania lives on not just in fossil remains and rock art, but in the fundamental characteristics that define human nature. Our capacity for rapid innovation under pressure, our ability to work together against common threats, our drive to understand and overcome the dangers we face. All of these traits were refined and perfected during our species' struggle against an opponent that seemed utterly invincible. In facing down Megalania, our ancestors didn't just survive. They discovered what it truly means to be human. They learned that intelligence and cooperation could triumph over raw physical power, that technology could overcome natural disadvantages, and that determination and courage could achieve what seemed impossible. These lessons echo through human history and continue to shape our response to every challenge we encounter. The story of humans versus Megalania is ultimately a story about the power of the human spirit to overcome any obstacle, no matter how formidable. It's a reminder that our species has faced seemingly impossible challenges before and emerged stronger as a result. As we confront the complex problems of the modern world, we can draw inspiration from our ancestors who looked into the eyes of the world's most dangerous predator and refused to surrender. Their victory over Megalania wasn't just about survival. It was about proving that intelligence, cooperation, and determination could overcome any challenge that nature could devise. That lesson remains as relevant today as it was 50,000 years ago, when the fate of humanity hung in the balance in the ancient landscapes of prehistoric Australia. The transformation of early human communities during this period created something that had never existed before in the history of life on Earth. A species that could learn from its mistakes faster than evolution could adapt to counter them. While Megalania remained locked into hunting patterns that had served it well for 1,000,000 years, humans were constantly innovating, constantly improving, constantly finding new ways to turn their weaknesses into strengths. This adaptability became humanity's ultimate weapon against a predator that seemed to have every possible advantage. Megalania was bigger, stronger, faster, and armed with deadly venom. It had perfect camouflage, incredible intelligence, and hunting instincts honed by millions of years of evolution. But it couldn't change its fundamental nature, and that inflexibility would prove to be its downfall. Archaeological evidence from this period reveals the breathtaking speed of human technological advancement. Tool assemblages found at sites separated by just a few hundred years show dramatic improvements in design, materials, and manufacturing techniques. It's as if each generation of humans was building on the knowledge of their predecessors, creating an exponential curve of innovation that Megalania simply couldn't match. Consider what this meant in practical terms. A Megalania individual might encounter humans with certain capabilities early in its life, learn to counter those specific threats, and then decades later face humans whose descendants had developed completely new technologies and tactics. The giant lizard's hard-won experience would suddenly become obsolete, forcing it to adapt to threats it had never encountered before. This technological arms race created a feedback loop that accelerated human development at an unprecedented pace. Each encounter with Megalania provided new information that could be processed, analyzed, and incorporated into improved survival strategies. Human communities became living laboratories for anti-predator innovation, with each successful technique spreading rapidly through cultural transmission. The social implications of this rapid innovation were equally profound. Human communities began developing specialized roles for individuals who showed particular aptitude for different aspects of survival. Some became expert trackers, capable of following Megalania's sign across vast distances. Others specialized in weapon manufacture, creating increasingly sophisticated tools designed specifically for penetrating reptilian armor. But perhaps most importantly, communities began producing individuals who specialized in what we might call strategic thinking. These weren't just leaders or decision makers. These were people who could process complex tactical information predict Megalania behavior patterns and coordinate group activities with military precision. They were essentially the world's first military strategists, and their innovations would reshape human society forever. The development of these strategic thinking capabilities had cascading effects throughout human culture. Communities that could plan more effectively, coordinate more efficiently, and adapt more rapidly had enormous survival advantages over those that relied on individual heroics or simple reactive responses to threats. This created powerful selective pressures that favored not just physical capabilities, but cognitive abilities that had never been crucial for survival before. The ability to think several moves ahead, to consider multiple scenarios simultaneously, to communicate complex plans effectively, all of these mental skills became matters of life and death in Megalania's world. The archaeological record shows evidence of increasingly sophisticated planning and preparation during this period. Tool caches positioned at strategic locations across the landscape suggest that human communities were thinking months or even years ahead, preparing for encounters that might never occur but could prove fatal if they did. Settlement patterns reveal equally complex strategic thinking. Human camps weren't just located near resources like water and food. They were positioned to provide maximum tactical advantages in case of Megalania encounters, high ground for visibility, multiple escape routes, natural barriers that could channel predator movement. All of these factors were considered when choosing where to establish communities. The logistics involved in maintaining these strategic settlements required organizational capabilities that seem almost impossible for Stone Age peoples. Coordinating the activities of dozens or hundreds of individuals, managing resource allocation across multiple sites, maintaining communication networks across vast distances, all of this had to be accomplished using only the most basic technologies. Yet somehow, early human communities not only managed these complex organizational challenges, they excelled at them. Archaeological evidence suggests that human settlements during this period were models of efficiency and strategic planning that wouldn't be out of place in modern military operations. The educational systems that emerged to support these complex societies were equally remarkable. Children weren't just taught basic survival skills. They received comprehensive training in tactical thinking, group coordination, and specialized techniques that might save their lives in Megalania encounters. This educational approach created individuals with capabilities that seem almost superhuman by modern standards. By adolescence, every member of these communities was essentially a specialist in multiple fields: tracking, hunting, tool manufacture, medical treatment, tactical planning, and psychological warfare. The depth and breadth of knowledge that each person possessed was staggering. But here's what makes this educational achievement even more remarkable. All of this knowledge had to be transmitted without writing systems, permanent records, or formal institutions. Everything was passed down through oral tradition, practical demonstration, and hands-on experience. The memory techniques and teaching methods that early humans developed to accomplish this knowledge transfer were masterpieces of educational innovation. The cultural practices that emerged during this period served multiple functions simultaneously. Storytelling sessions weren't just entertainment. They were tactical briefings that encoded crucial survival information in memorable formats. Dance ceremonies weren't just artistic expression. They were training exercises that practiced coordinated group movements under stress. Even recreational activities served strategic purposes. Games developed during this period often involved elements of tactical thinking, rapid decision-making, and coordinated teamwork. Children who excelled at these games were developing skills that could save their lives and the lives of their community members during actual Megalania encounters. The psychological preparation required for living under constant threat from such a dangerous predator cannot be overstated. Modern humans living in relatively safe environments often struggle with anxiety and stress from much lesser threats. Early humans had to develop mental toughness and emotional resilience that allowed them to function effectively while knowing that death could come at any moment. The mechanisms that early human communities developed for maintaining psychological health under these extreme conditions were remarkably sophisticated. Group rituals that reinforced social bonds, individual practices that managed fear and anxiety, cultural traditions that celebrated courage and sacrifice, all of these served crucial functions in keeping communities mentally healthy and operationally effective. Archaeological evidence suggests that these psychological support systems were as carefully developed and maintained as any physical technology. Special locations were set aside for ritual activities. Specific tools were created for ceremonial purposes, and particular individuals were trained to serve as psychological counselors and spiritual guides for their communities. The effectiveness of these psychological preparation techniques can be measured by their results. Human communities not only survived under conditions that would be considered impossibly stressful by modern standards, they thrived and expanded their populations despite facing constant mortal danger. But the most remarkable aspect of human psychological adaptation during this period was the development of what we might call predator mindset. Early humans didn't just learn to avoid becoming Megalania's prey. They learned to think like predators themselves, developing the mental frameworks necessary to hunt creatures that had never before faced organized opposition. This psychological transformation required overcoming millions of years of evolutionary programming that told humans to flee from large, dangerous predators. Instead, they had to develop the confidence and aggression necessary to actively pursue creatures that could kill them with a single bite. The cultural mechanisms that supported this psychological transformation were ingenious. Coming-of-age ceremonies that tested courage under dangerous conditions, warrior traditions that celebrated successful predator encounters, social structures that rewarded individuals who demonstrated exceptional bravery in the face of mortal danger. These weren't just cultural practices, they were psychological technologies designed to produce individuals capable of functioning effectively in situations that would paralyze most modern humans with terror. The success of these techniques is demonstrated by their results. communities of people who could coordinate complex military operations against the world's most dangerous predator. The weapons technology that emerged during this period represents some of the most sophisticated engineering achievements in human history. Using only stone, wood, bone, and other natural materials, early humans created projectile systems that could deliver lethal force at distances far beyond Megalania's striking range. But the true genius of these weapons wasn't just their individual effectiveness. It was how they were integrated into comprehensive tactical systems that maximized their impact while minimizing risk to the users. Spear throwers that allowed precise targeting from safe distances, specialized projectile points designed to penetrate reptilian hide, backup weapons that could be deployed if primary systems failed. The manufacturing techniques required to produce these sophisticated weapons were equally impressive. Quality control standards that ensured consistent performance, material selection processes that identified the best raw materials, assembly procedures that created weapons capable of withstanding extreme stress during life-or-death encounters. Archaeological analysis of weapon fragments from this period reveals manufacturing techniques that wouldn't be out of place in modern precision engineering. Tolerances measured in fractions of millimeters, surface finishes that optimized aerodynamic performance, composite construction that combined multiple materials for maximum effectiveness. The testing and development processes that early humans used to refine their weapons were as systematic as any modern research and development program. Prototype weapons were evaluated under controlled conditions. Design modifications were tested and refined. Successful innovations were rapidly incorporated into production models. This systematic approach to weapons development created an accelerating cycle of improvement that gave humans increasingly effective tools for dealing with Megalania encounters. Each generation of weapons was more accurate, more powerful, and more reliable than the previous version, creating technological advantages that Megalania couldn't counter through biological adaptation. The tactical innovations that accompanied these weapons developments were equally sophisticated. Early humans didn't just create better tools. They developed comprehensive battle doctrines that specified exactly how these tools should be employed for maximum effectiveness against different types of threats. Coordinated attack formations that allowed multiple hunters to engage a single Megalania simultaneously. Diversionary tactics that confused and misdirected the giant predator. Retreat procedures that ensured tactical withdrawals could be executed safely if encounters went badly. These tactical systems weren't just theoretical constructs. They were battle-tested procedures that had been refined through actual combat experience against the world's most dangerous predator. The level of tactical sophistication that early humans achieved during this period rivals that of modern military organizations. The intelligence-gathering capabilities that supported these tactical operations were equally impressive. Networks of scouts and observers that provided real-time information about Megalania movements, tracking specialists who could predict predator behavior based on subtle environmental signs, communication systems that could relay tactical information across vast distances in minutes, This intelligence network gave human communities situational awareness that extended far beyond what any individual could achieve alone. They could track multiple Megalania individuals simultaneously, predict their movement patterns, and coordinate their own activities to avoid dangerous encounters while maximizing hunting opportunities. The medical capabilities that early human communities developed during this period represent one of their most remarkable achievements. Treating injuries inflicted by Megalania required understanding of anatomy, toxicology, and emergency medicine that seems almost impossible for Stone Age peoples to have achieved. Yet, archaeological evidence clearly shows that early humans developed sophisticated medical techniques specifically designed to save people who had been attacked by venomous giant lizards. Surgical tools that could perform precise operations, medicinal compounds that could neutralize toxins, treatment protocols that could stabilize patients who had suffered massive trauma. The knowledge base required to develop these medical capabilities was staggering. Early human medical specialists had to understand Megalania anatomy well enough to predict injury patterns, venom chemistry well enough to develop antidotes, and human physiology well enough to design effective treatments. But perhaps most remarkably, they had to develop all of this knowledge through direct observation and experimentation under conditions where mistakes could be fatal. Every medical technique they developed was tested under actual combat conditions, with the lives of community members hanging in the balance. The success of early human medical practices during this period can be measured by the survival rates of communities that faced regular Megalania encounters. Archaeological evidence suggests that human populations continued to grow despite facing constant threats from the world's most dangerous predator, indicating that their medical capabilities were effective enough to maintain demographic stability. The preventive medicine approaches that early humans developed were equally sophisticated. Rather than just treating injuries after they occurred, they developed comprehensive programs designed to help people avoid dangerous encounters and survive them if they did occur. Physical conditioning programs that improved reaction times and endurance, dietary modifications that enhanced resistance to venom, protective equipment that could deflect or absorb the impact of Megalania attacks. All of these preventive measures were integrated into daily life in human communities. The psychological preparation aspects of early human medicine were particularly advanced. Techniques for managing fear and anxiety during dangerous encounters, methods for maintaining clear thinking under extreme stress, practices for building the mental toughness necessary to survive in Megalania's world. These weren't just ad hoc responses to immediate threats. They were comprehensive medical systems that addressed every aspect of human health and performance relevant to survival in one of the most dangerous environments ever faced by our species. The success of these medical innovations had profound effects on human population dynamics and social organization. Communities that could keep more of their members alive and healthy had enormous advantages over those that suffered higher casualty rates from predator encounters. This created powerful selective pressures that favored not just individual medical knowledge, but the social structures and cultural practices that supported effective medical care, communities that could train medical specialists, maintain medical supplies, and coordinate medical responses to emergencies were more likely to survive and prosper. The knowledge preservation systems that early humans developed to maintain their medical expertise across generations were particularly impressive. Without writing systems or formal educational institutions, they had to develop oral traditions and practical training programs that could transmit complex medical knowledge accurately over hundreds of generations. The fact that these knowledge preservation systems were successful is demonstrated by their persistence in modern Aboriginal Australian cultures. Traditional medical practices that can be traced back to the Megalania period continue to be used today, showing that early human communities created knowledge preservation systems that were effective across thousands of years. As human communities became increasingly successful at surviving Megalania encounters, they began to develop capabilities that went beyond simple survival. They started to see these giant predators not just as threats to be avoided, but as resources to be exploited and competitors to be eliminated. This shift in perspective represented a fundamental change in the relationship between humans and their environment. Rather than simply adapting to the natural world as they found it, humans began actively reshaping that world to better serve their needs and purposes. The hunting expeditions that early humans organized against Megalania were masterpieces of planning and execution that required coordination between dozens of individuals over extended periods. These weren't opportunistic attacks on weakened or isolated predators. These were systematic campaigns designed to eliminate healthy, dangerous adults from prime territory. The logistics involved in organizing these hunting expeditions were staggering. Coordinating the activities of multiple hunting groups, maintaining supply lines across vast distances, establishing communication networks that could coordinate tactical movements in real time, all of this had to be accomplished using only Stone Age technology. Yet somehow, early human communities not only managed these complex organizational challenges, they did so while maintaining operational security that kept their plans hidden from incredibly intelligent predators. The planning and execution capabilities that these hunting expeditions required were as sophisticated as any modern military operation. The success of these hunting campaigns had profound effects on human self-perception and cultural identity. Communities that successfully eliminated Megalania individuals from their territory gained enormous prestige and confidence that translated into advantages in other areas of life. More importantly, each successful hunt provided crucial intelligence about Megalania capabilities and vulnerabilities that could be applied to future encounters. Humans were essentially conducting systematic research on their most dangerous adversary, accumulating knowledge that made subsequent operations more effective and less risky. The processing and utilization of Megalania remains after successful hunts reveals the incredible efficiency and resourcefulness of early human communities. Every part of these massive creatures was put to use for some practical purpose, demonstrating the same comprehensive approach to resource utilization that characterized all human activities during this period. Meat provided protein for extended periods, supporting larger communities and more ambitious projects. Hide was processed into protective equipment and specialized tools that couldn't be made from other materials. Bones were carved into weapons and implements that took advantage of the unique properties of Megalania skeletal material. Even the venom glands were studied and potentially utilized for coating weapons and developing medical treatments. This comprehensive approach to resource utilization meant that successful Megalania hunts provided benefits that extended far beyond simple food acquisition. The knowledge gained from processing Megalania remains also contributed to human understanding of anatomy, material science, and chemical processes that would prove valuable in other contexts. Early humans were essentially conducting scientific research on one of the most sophisticated biological systems ever evolved. The technological innovations that emerged from this research had applications far beyond hunting giant lizards. Techniques developed for working with tough reptilian materials could be applied to processing other animal products. Chemical processes discovered through studying venom could be used for preserving food and treating medical conditions. This cross-pollination of knowledge and techniques created an accelerating cycle of innovation that gave human communities capabilities that extended far beyond what would be expected from their original survival needs. The intellectual framework developed for understanding Megalania became a foundation for understanding and manipulating the natural world in general. The transformation of humans from prey to predator during this period established patterns of technological development and environmental manipulation that would characterize our species for the rest of its history. The same capabilities that allowed early humans to triumph over Megalania would eventually enable our expansion into every environment on Earth. But this transformation also established patterns of environmental impact that continued to shape our relationship with the natural world today. The same intelligence and determination that saved our ancestors from extinction also gave them the power to drive other species to extinction, beginning a pattern that would repeat itself wherever humans expanded. The lessons learned from humanity's confrontation with Megalania remain relevant as our species faces modern challenges that require similar combinations of intelligence, cooperation, and technological innovation. Understanding how our ancestors overcame seemingly impossible odds provides both inspiration and guidance for addressing contemporary problems. The story of humans versus Megalania ultimately demonstrates that intelligence, cooperation, and determination can overcome any challenge, no matter how formidable. Our ancestors proved that human ingenuity has no limits when survival is at stake, and that lesson continues to define what it means to be human. Their victory over the world's most dangerous predator wasn't just about survival. It was about proving that our species possesses capabilities that can triumph over any obstacle that nature can devise. That legacy of human achievement continues to inspire and guide us as we face the complex challenges of the modern world. The ancient confrontation between humans and Megalania represents humanity's greatest test and our most defining triumph. It established the characteristics that make us uniquely human and demonstrated the unlimited potential that emerges when intelligence, courage, and cooperation combine in the face of seemingly impossible challenges. The evidence of this transformation can be found in the most unexpected places. Deep in caves across northern Australia, archaeologists have discovered something that sends chills down your spine when you understand what you're looking at. These aren't just ancient drawings on cave walls. These are the world's first military manuals, instruction guides created by people who had to learn the hard way exactly how to kill something that evolution had spent 1,000,000 years perfecting. Look at these images, and you'll see tactical formations that wouldn't be out of place in a modern warfare textbook. Human figures positioned at precise angles around massive reptilian shapes, spears coordinated for maximum impact, fire used as both weapon and shield. But here's what's truly remarkable about these cave paintings. They show progression over time. The earliest images depict humans running in terror from creatures they couldn't hope to fight. But as you move through the chronological sequence, everything changes. Humans start appearing with better tools, more coordinated formations, and finally, as the hunters rather than the hunted. This artistic evolution tells the story of humanity's most incredible transformation. We didn't just learn to survive against Megalania. We learned to dominate it, and we did it faster than any species in the history of life on Earth had ever adapted to anything. The archaeological sites from this period reveal innovations that seem almost impossible for Stone Age peoples. Hidden weapon caches, positioned across hundreds of miles of territory, show that our ancestors were thinking strategically on a scale that defies imagination. They weren't just preparing for the next encounter with Megalania. They were planning campaigns that might unfold over months or years. Think about what this level of preparation required. Every cache had to be perfectly positioned for maximum tactical advantage. Every weapon had to be manufactured to precise specifications and maintained in perfect condition despite exposure to harsh environmental conditions. Every location had to be memorized and passed down through generations of hunters who might need to access these resources under life-or-death circumstances. The sophistication of these preparation systems reveals something profound about early human intelligence. These weren't just clever animals trying to avoid becoming prey. These were strategic thinkers operating at a level of complexity that seems almost supernatural by natural standards. But the most revolutionary aspect of human survival strategy wasn't their tools or their tactics. It was their ability to turn Megalania's own strengths against it. For the first time in natural history, prey animals were using psychological warfare against their predators. Early humans discovered that they could exploit Megalania's intelligence and territorial instincts in ways that no previous prey species had ever attempted. By creating false trails, establishing decoy camps, and manipulating scent markers, they could confuse and misdirect a predator that had never encountered deceptive tactics before. Picture how revolutionary this was. For millions of years, predator-prey interactions had been straightforward contests of physical capabilities. Suddenly, humans introduced an element that changed everything. They could lie, They could make Megalania believe things that weren't true, leading this incredibly dangerous predator into situations where it was vulnerable rather than dominant. The psychological dimension of this ancient conflict extended far beyond simple misdirection. Archaeological evidence suggests that humans learned to use sound as a weapon, creating noise patterns that would disrupt Megalania's hunting routines and territorial behaviors. They developed techniques for mimicking the distress calls of prey animals, potentially luring giant lizards into disadvantageous positions where coordinated human attacks could be most effective. Most ingeniously, they figured out how to trigger conflicts between different Megalania individuals by manipulating territorial boundaries. By strategically placing scent trails and carcass remains in contested areas, humans could potentially cause these massive predators to fight each other rather than focus their attention on hunting human communities. This divide-and-conquer strategy demonstrates a level of strategic thinking that seems almost impossibly sophisticated for people using Stone Age technology. They were essentially conducting psychological operations against creatures that had never before faced opponents capable of such complex tactical thinking. The early warning systems that human communities developed during this period were engineering marvels that rival modern surveillance networks. Observation posts positioned across vast territories provided overlapping coverage that could track Megalania movements over hundreds of square miles. These weren't randomly placed lookout points. They were carefully planned surveillance networks that maximized visibility while maintaining concealment from ground-level predators. The communication systems that connected these observation posts were equally impressive. Using smoke signals, reflected light, and acoustic methods, human communities could relay complex tactical information across enormous distances in a matter of minutes. A Megalania sighting in one area could trigger coordinated responses across an entire region, giving human communities situational awareness that no individual predator could match. But here's what makes these communication networks truly remarkable. They had to function perfectly under the most extreme stress conditions imaginable. When a 20-foot venomous lizard was approaching your community, there was no room for miscommunication or system failures. The technical reliability and operational effectiveness of these Stone Age communication systems was absolutely critical to human survival. The logistics capabilities that early human communities developed to support their anti-Megalania operations were staggering in their complexity and efficiency. They created supply chains that could maintain hunting expeditions lasting weeks or months in hostile territory. They established equipment maintenance protocols that ensured weapons and tools remained in peak condition, despite constant use under extreme conditions. Consider what this meant from a practical standpoint. Human hunting parties had to carry everything they needed for extended operations in areas where Megalania was actively hunting. They needed backup weapons in case primary systems failed, medical supplies for treating injuries, food and water for sustained operations, and communication equipment for maintaining contact with base communities. All of this had to be accomplished using only materials available in nature and tools that could be manufactured by hand. Yet somehow, early human communities not only managed these complex logistical challenges, they excelled at them to a degree that enabled systematic hunting campaigns against the world's most dangerous predator. The medical knowledge that early humans developed during this period represents one of their most extraordinary achievements. Treating injuries inflicted by Megalania required understanding of anatomy, toxicology, and emergency medicine that wouldn't seem out of place in a modern trauma center. Archaeological evidence shows that early human communities developed specialized surgical tools designed specifically for treating venomous bite wounds. Stone scalpels with precision edges for removing damaged tissue, bone needles for suturing deep lacerations, and grinding stones for preparing medicinal compounds that could neutralize toxins and prevent infection. But the most remarkable aspect of early human medical knowledge was its preventive focus. Rather than just treating injuries after they occurred, human communities developed comprehensive health maintenance programs designed to maximize survival chances during Megalania encounters. Physical conditioning regimens that improved reaction times and endurance, dietary modifications that enhanced resistance to venom, protective equipment that could deflect or absorb the impact of attacks. All of these preventive measures were integrated into daily life in human communities. The psychological preparation techniques that early humans developed were equally sophisticated. Living under constant threat from creatures that could kill you with a single bite required mental toughness that seems almost superhuman by modern standards. Human communities developed ritual practices, group ceremonies, and individual training methods that built the psychological resilience necessary to function effectively in Megalania's world. These weren't just coping mechanisms for dealing with stress. These were comprehensive psychological technologies designed to produce individuals capable of making life or death decisions under extreme pressure while maintaining the clear thinking necessary for complex tactical operations. The effectiveness of these psychological preparation systems can be measured by their results. Human communities not only survived under conditions that would break most modern people completely, they thrived and expanded their populations despite facing constant mortal danger from the most efficient predator ever evolved. The social structures that emerged during this period were unlike anything that had existed before in human history. The constant threat posed by Megalania forced communities to develop unprecedented levels of cooperation and coordination. Individual survival became impossible without group support, leading to social organizations that prioritized collective success over personal advancement. Leadership positions were based purely on demonstrated ability to make correct decisions under extreme pressure. Social status was determined by contributions to group survival rather than individual achievements or inherited advantages. Every member of the community had specialized roles that were critical to collective success, creating social bonds that were literally matters of life and death. The educational systems that developed to support these complex societies were masterpieces of knowledge transmission. Children received comprehensive training in tactical thinking, group coordination, tool manufacture, medical procedures, and psychological warfare techniques. By adolescence, every community member was essentially a specialist in multiple fields related to anti-predator operations. But here's what makes this educational achievement even more remarkable. All of this knowledge had to be transmitted without writing systems, permanent records, or formal institutions. Everything was passed down through oral tradition, practical demonstration, and hands-on experience under actual field conditions. The memory techniques and teaching methods that early humans developed to accomplish this knowledge transfer were incredibly sophisticated. Stories that encoded tactical information in memorable formats, songs that helped maintain group coordination during operations, dances that practiced emergency procedures under simulated stress conditions. These cultural practices weren't just entertainment or artistic expression. They were survival technologies, as important as any physical weapon or tool. The information encoded in these cultural forms could mean the difference between life and death during actual Megalania encounters. The technological innovations that emerged from this period of intense selective pressure were absolutely extraordinary. Humans developed composite weapons that combined multiple materials for maximum effectiveness against reptilian armor. They created modular tool systems that could be rapidly reconfigured for different tactical situations. They invented camouflage techniques that could make entire hunting parties invisible to predators with incredibly acute senses. But perhaps most importantly, they developed manufacturing techniques that could produce weapons and tools with reliability standards that were critical for life or death applications. Quality control processes that ensured consistent performance, material selection methods that identified optimal raw materials, assembly procedures that created equipment capable of functioning perfectly under extreme stress. The testing and development processes that early humans used to refine their technologies were as systematic as any modern research and development program. Prototype weapons were evaluated under controlled conditions. Design modifications were tested and refined through actual field trials. Successful innovations were rapidly incorporated into production models and distributed throughout the community. This systematic approach to technological development created an accelerating cycle of improvement that gave humans increasingly sophisticated capabilities for dealing with Megalania encounters. Each generation of weapons was more accurate, more powerful, and more reliable than the previous version, creating technological advantages that biological evolution simply couldn't match. The hunting techniques that humans eventually developed for actively pursuing Megalania were masterpieces of tactical planning and execution. Multiple coordinated groups would work together to drive giant lizards into predetermined locations where their mobility would be restricted and their escape routes controlled. Specialized weapons designed specifically for penetrating thick reptilian hide would be deployed from multiple angles simultaneously, ensuring that even if individual attacks weren't immediately fatal, the cumulative damage would be overwhelming. Backup procedures ensured that if primary attack plans failed, secondary and tertiary options could be implemented without losing tactical initiative. But the most remarkable aspect of these hunting operations was their psychological dimension. Humans had to overcome millions of years of evolutionary programming that told them to flee from large, dangerous predators. Instead, they developed the mental frameworks necessary to actively pursue creatures that could kill them instantly if anything went wrong. The success of these hunting expeditions had profound effects on human communities that extended far beyond simple food acquisition. Each successful hunt provided enormous quantities of meat that could support larger populations and more ambitious projects. Megalania hide could be processed into protective equipment and specialized tools that couldn't be made from other materials. Most importantly, every successful hunt provided crucial intelligence about Megalania anatomy, behavior, and vulnerabilities that could be applied to future encounters. Humans were essentially conducting systematic research on their most dangerous adversary, accumulating knowledge that made subsequent operations progressively more effective and less risky. The processing techniques that early humans developed for utilizing Megalania remains were incredibly comprehensive and efficient. Every part of these massive creatures was put to use for some practical purpose, demonstrating the same systematic approach to resource utilization that characterized all human activities during this period. Venom glands were studied and potentially used for coating weapons and developing medical treatments. Bones were carved into implements that took advantage of the unique structural properties of Megalania's skeletal material. Even teeth were incorporated into cutting tools and ceremonial objects that served important cultural functions. This comprehensive utilization of resources meant that successful Megalania hunts provided benefits that extended far beyond immediate survival needs. The materials and knowledge gained from these operations contributed to technological innovations and cultural developments that would prove valuable in many other contexts. The transformation of human communities during this period created something that had never existed before in the history of life on Earth. A species that could learn and adapt faster than biological evolution could respond. While Megalania remained locked into behavior patterns that had served it well for 1 million years, humans were constantly innovating, constantly improving their capabilities, constantly finding new ways to turn disadvantages into advantages. This adaptability became humanity's ultimate weapon against a predator that seemed to possess every possible natural advantage. Megalania was bigger, stronger, faster, more heavily armed, and more experienced than any opponent it had ever faced. But it couldn't change its fundamental nature quickly enough to counter the rapid innovations that human intelligence made possible. The archaeological record reveals the breathtaking speed of human technological and tactical advancement during this period. Equipment assemblages found at sites separated by just a few generations show dramatic improvements in design, materials, and manufacturing techniques. It's as if each group of humans was building systematically on the knowledge of their predecessors, creating an exponential curve of innovation that Megalania simply couldn't match through biological adaptation. Consider what this meant in practical terms. A Megalania individual might encounter humans with certain capabilities early in its life, learn to counter those specific tactics, and then years later face humans whose communities had developed completely different technologies and strategies. The giant lizard's hard-won experience would suddenly become obsolete, forcing it to adapt to threats it had never encountered before. This technological arms race created a feedback loop that accelerated human development at a pace that was unprecedented in natural history. Each encounter with Megalania provided new information that could be processed, analyzed, and incorporated into improved survival strategies within a single generation. Human communities became living laboratories for anti-predator innovation, with successful techniques spreading rapidly through cultural transmission across entire populations. The strategic thinking capabilities that emerged during this period had cascading effects throughout human society that extended far beyond anti-predator operations. Communities that could plan more effectively, coordinate more efficiently, and adapt more rapidly had enormous advantages in every aspect of survival and expansion. This created powerful selective pressures that favored cognitive abilities that had never been crucial for survival before. The capacity to think multiple steps ahead, to consider numerous scenarios simultaneously, to communicate complex plans effectively, all of these mental skills became matters of life and death in Megalania's world. Settlement patterns from this period reveal increasingly sophisticated strategic planning. Human camps weren't just located near essential resources like water and food sources. They were positioned to provide maximum tactical advantages in case of predator encounters. High ground for visibility and defensive positioning, multiple escape routes for emergency evacuation, natural barriers that could channel predator movement into predetermined kill zones. The organizational capabilities required to coordinate these strategic settlements seem almost impossible for Stone Age communities. Managing the activities of hundreds of individuals across multiple sites, maintaining resource allocation systems that could support extended operations, establishing communication networks that functioned reliably across vast distances, all of this had to be accomplished using only the most basic technologies available. Yet archaeological evidence clearly demonstrates that early human communities not only managed these complex organizational challenges, they excelled at them to a degree that enabled systematic campaigns against the world's most dangerous predator. The planning and execution capabilities that these operations required were as sophisticated as any modern military organization. The intelligence-gathering networks that supported human anti-Megalania operations were equally impressive in their scope and effectiveness. Teams of scouts and observers provided real-time information about predator movements across enormous territories. Tracking specialists could predict Megalania behavior patterns based on subtle environmental indicators that would be invisible to untrained observers. Communication systems could relay tactical intelligence across hundreds of miles in a matter of hours, giving human communities situational awareness that extended far beyond what any individual could achieve through direct observation. They could track multiple Megalania individuals simultaneously, predict their movement patterns, and coordinate their own activities to avoid dangerous encounters while maximizing hunting opportunities. This intelligence capability gave humans strategic advantages that more than compensated for their physical disadvantages when confronting Megalania. While the giant lizards possessed superior strength, speed, and natural weapons, humans possessed superior information and coordination that allowed them to choose when, where, and how to engage their most dangerous adversary. The cultural innovations that emerged during this period served multiple strategic functions simultaneously. Storytelling traditions weren't just entertainment or artistic expression. They were tactical briefings that encoded crucial survival information in formats that could be easily remembered and accurately transmitted across generations. Dance ceremonies weren't just cultural practices. They were training exercises that allowed entire communities to practice coordinated movements and emergency procedures under controlled conditions. Musical traditions weren't just creative outlets. They were communication systems that could coordinate group activities and maintain morale during extended dangerous operations. Even recreational activities served strategic purposes related to anti-predator operations. Games developed during this period often incorporated elements of tactical thinking, rapid decision-making, and coordinated teamwork. Children who excelled at these activities were developing skills that could save their lives and the lives of their community members during actual Megalania encounters. The psychological support systems that early human communities developed were as sophisticated as their technological innovations. Living under constant threat from creatures that could kill instantly required mental preparation techniques that seem almost impossible to achieve without modern psychological knowledge. Group rituals that reinforce social bonds and collective identity, individual practices that managed fear and anxiety during high-stress situations, cultural traditions that celebrated courage and honored sacrifice for the greater good. All of these served crucial functions in maintaining community mental health and operational effectiveness. The success of these psychological preparation systems can be measured by their results. Human communities maintained high levels of functionality and continued population growth despite facing threats that would completely paralyze most modern people. They developed individual and collective resilience that allowed them to thrive in conditions that seem impossibly dangerous by contemporary standards. But perhaps the most remarkable aspect of human psychological adaptation during this period was the development of what could be called a predator mindset. Early humans didn't just learn to avoid becoming Megalania's prey. They learned to think like predators themselves, developing the mental frameworks necessary to hunt creatures that had never before faced organized opposition from their food sources. This psychological transformation required overcoming fundamental aspects of human nature that have been shaped by millions of years of evolution as prey animals. Instead of instinctive flight responses when confronted by large predators, humans had to develop the confidence and controlled aggression necessary to pursue creatures that could kill them with a single mistake. The cultural mechanisms that supported this psychological transformation were ingenious in their design and implementation. Coming-of-age ceremonies that tested courage under genuinely dangerous conditions, warrior traditions that celebrated successful predator encounters and honored those who sacrificed themselves for community protection, social structures that provided status and recognition for individuals who demonstrated exceptional bravery in life-threatening situations. These weren't just cultural practices or traditional customs. They were psychological technologies specifically designed to produce individuals capable of functioning effectively in situations that would overwhelm most people with paralyzing terror. The effectiveness of these techniques is demonstrated by their results. Communities of people who could coordinate complex military operations against the world's most dangerous predator and emerge victorious. The weapons technology that emerged during this period represents some of the most sophisticated engineering achievements in human history, considering the materials and tools available. Using only stone, wood, bone, and plant fibers, early humans created projectile systems that could deliver lethal force with precision accuracy at distances far beyond Megalania's striking range. But the true genius of these weapons wasn't just their individual effectiveness. It was how they were integrated into comprehensive tactical systems that maximized their impact while minimizing risk to the operators. Spear throwers that provided mechanical advantage for long-range targeting, specialized projectile points designed specifically for penetrating reptilian armor, backup weapon systems that could be deployed rapidly if primary systems failed or were damaged. The manufacturing techniques required to produce these sophisticated weapons were equally impressive in their precision and consistency. Quality control standards that ensured reliable performance under extreme stress conditions. Material selection processes that identified optimal raw materials for specific applications. Assembly procedures that created weapons capable of functioning perfectly in life-or-death situations. Archaeological analysis of weapon fragments from this period reveals manufacturing tolerances and finishing techniques that seem almost impossible to achieve using Stone Age tools. Surface treatments that optimized aerodynamic performance, composite construction methods that combined multiple materials for maximum effectiveness, design features that incorporated sophisticated understanding of physics and engineering principles. The testing and development processes that early humans used to refine their weapons were as systematic and thorough as any modern research program. Prototype designs were evaluated under controlled conditions that simulated actual combat situations. Modifications were tested and refined through extensive field trials. Successful innovations were rapidly incorporated into production models and distributed throughout hunting communities. This systematic approach to weapons development created an accelerating cycle of technological improvement that gave humans increasingly effective tools for confronting Megalania. Each generation of weapons was more accurate, more powerful, and more reliable than previous versions, creating technological advantages that biological evolution simply couldn't match through adaptive responses. The tactical doctrines that accompanied these weapons developments were equally sophisticated in their complexity and effectiveness. Early humans didn't just create better tools for hunting dangerous predators. They developed comprehensive battle strategies that specified exactly how these tools should be employed for maximum effect against different types of threats and in various environmental conditions. Coordinated attack formations that allowed multiple hunters to engage a single Megalania simultaneously from different angles. Diversionary tactics that confused and misdirected giant predators while positioning them for optimal targeting. Withdrawal procedures that ensured tactical retreats could be executed safely if encounters developed unfavorably. These tactical systems weren't theoretical constructs developed in peaceful conditions. They were battle-tested procedures that had been refined through actual combat experience against creatures that could kill instantly if anything went wrong. The level of tactical sophistication that early humans achieved during this period rivals that of modern military organizations with access to advanced technology and extensive training resources. As human communities became increasingly successful at surviving and hunting Megalania, they began to develop capabilities that went far beyond simple predator avoidance or even active hunting. They started to see these giant lizards not just as threats to be managed or resources to be exploited, but as competitors to be systematically eliminated from prime territory. This shift in perspective represented a fundamental change in humanity's relationship with the natural environment. Rather than simply adapting to ecological conditions as they found them, humans began actively reshaping entire ecosystems to better serve their expanding needs and territorial ambitions. The systematic hunting campaigns that early human communities organized against Megalania were logistical and tactical masterpieces that required coordination between dozens of participants over extended time periods. These weren't opportunistic attacks on isolated or weakened individuals. These were comprehensive military operations designed to eliminate healthy, dangerous adults from strategically important areas. The planning requirements for these hunting expeditions were staggering in their complexity and scope. Coordinating the movements of multiple hunting groups across vast territories, maintaining supply lines that could support extended operations in hostile areas, establishing communication networks that could provide real-time tactical coordination during dynamic situations. All of this had to be accomplished using only Stone Age technology and organizational methods. Yet somehow, early human communities not only managed these extraordinary challenges, they executed them with precision and effectiveness that enabled systematic elimination of individual Megalania from contested territories. The success of these hunting campaigns had profound psychological and cultural effects that extended far beyond their immediate tactical objectives. Communities that successfully eliminated Megalania individuals from their areas gained enormous prestige and confidence that translated into advantages in territorial expansion, resource acquisition, and population growth. More importantly, each successful elimination provided crucial detailed intelligence about Megalania capabilities, behavior patterns, and physical vulnerabilities that could be applied to future operations. Humans were essentially conducting systematic scientific research on their most dangerous competitor, accumulating knowledge that made subsequent campaigns progressively more effective and less risky for participants. The processing and utilization techniques that early humans developed for Megalania remains after successful hunts demonstrate the same comprehensive efficiency that characterized all their survival activities during this period. Every component of these massive creatures was utilized for practical purposes that contributed to community capabilities and long-term success. Meat provided protein resources that could support larger populations and more ambitious projects requiring sustained effort. Hide was processed into protective equipment, specialized tools, and materials that couldn't be obtained from any other source. Skeletal elements were carved into implements that took advantage of unique structural properties possessed by Megalania bone material. Even organs and glands were studied and potentially utilized for medical applications and weapon enhancement. This systematic approach to resource utilization meant that successful Megalania hunts provided benefits that extended far beyond immediate food acquisition, contributing to technological innovation and cultural development in numerous areas. The knowledge gained through processing Megalania remains also advanced human understanding of anatomy, material science, and chemical processes in ways that proved valuable for many other applications. Early humans were essentially conducting advanced scientific research on one of the most sophisticated biological systems ever produced by evolution. The technological innovations that emerged from this research had applications that extended far beyond hunting giant predators. Techniques developed for working with tough reptilian materials could be applied to processing other animal products more effectively. Chemical processes discovered through studying venom systems could be utilized for food preservation, medical treatments, and weapon enhancement. This cross-pollination of knowledge and techniques created accelerating cycles of innovation that gave human communities capabilities extending far beyond what would be expected from their original anti-predator needs. The intellectual frameworks developed for understanding and manipulating Megalania biology became foundations for understanding and controlling natural processes in general. The transformation of humans from potential prey to dominant predator during this period established technological development patterns and environmental manipulation strategies that would characterize our species throughout the rest of its evolutionary history. The same capabilities that enabled early humans to triumph over Megalania would eventually facilitate human expansion into every environment on Earth. But this transformation also established patterns of environmental impact and species elimination that continue to shape our relationship with the natural world today. The intelligence, determination, and technological innovation that saved our ancestors from extinction also provided them with power to drive other species to extinction, beginning a pattern that would repeat wherever humans expanded their territorial control. The lessons learned from humanity's confrontation with Megalania remain directly relevant as our species faces modern challenges requiring similar combinations of intelligence, cooperation, and rapid technological adaptation. Understanding how our ancestors overcame seemingly impossible odds provides both inspiration and practical guidance for addressing contemporary problems that threaten human survival and prosperity. The story of humans versus Megalania ultimately demonstrates that intelligence, cooperation, and determination can overcome any challenge, regardless of how formidable it appears initially. Our ancestors proved that human ingenuity has no practical limits when survival motivations are sufficient, and that fundamental lesson continues to define what distinguishes our species from all others. Their victory over the world's most dangerous predator wasn't simply about biological survival. It was about proving that human capabilities can triumph over any obstacle that natural processes can create. That legacy of achievement continues to inspire and guide us as we confront the complex challenges of our modern technological civilization. The ancient confrontation between humans and Megalania represents humanity's greatest evolutionary test and our most defining triumph as a species. It established the characteristics that make us uniquely human and demonstrated the unlimited potential that emerges when intelligence, courage, and cooperation combine effectively in response to existential challenges. The evidence of this transformation can be seen in ways that still impact us today. When early Aboriginal Australians first arrived on the continent, they brought with them stories, technologies, and survival strategies that had been tested against dangers we can barely imagine. But they also brought something else: the unshakable confidence that comes from knowing your species has faced the ultimate test and emerged victorious. Think about what this meant for human expansion across the globe. Every subsequent challenge our ancestors encountered, every new predator they faced, every hostile environment they entered seemed manageable compared to what they had already overcome. They had defeated a creature that evolution had spent over 1,000,000 years perfecting as the ultimate killing machine. What could possibly be more dangerous than that? This psychological advantage proved as important as any technological innovation. When humans eventually spread to other continents, they carried with them the knowledge that no natural predator, no matter how formidable, was beyond their ability to understand, outmaneuver, and ultimately defeat. The mammoth hunters of Europe, the saber-toothed cat survivors of the Americas, all inherited the mental frameworks and tactical approaches that had been forged in Australia's crucible of survival. But here's where the story takes a turn that's both triumphant and sobering. The same capabilities that allowed humans to survive against Megalania also enabled something unprecedented in natural history: the systematic elimination of megafauna wherever our species expanded. The technologies, strategies, and mindset that saved our ancestors from extinction became tools for driving other magnificent creatures to extinction. Within just a few thousand years of human expansion across the globe, the world's largest and most impressive animals began disappearing at rates that had never been seen before. Giant ground sloths in South America, massive cave bears in Europe, enormous flightless birds in New Zealand all fell victim to the same combination of intelligence, technology and ecological disruption that had doomed Megalania. This pattern reveals something profound about human nature that we're still grappling with today. We are simultaneously the most successful survival story in natural history, and the most destructive force that evolution has ever produced. The same traits that make us extraordinary also make us extraordinarily dangerous to everything else sharing our planet. The extinction of Megalania marked the end of an era that had lasted for millions of years. For the first time since complex life evolved, intelligence and technology had proven more powerful than size, strength, and biological weaponry. The rules of natural selection had been fundamentally altered by a species that could adapt faster than evolution itself. Modern Aboriginal Australian cultures preserve the memory of this ancient triumph in ways that continue to amaze scientists. Oral traditions that have been passed down for over 1,000 generations describe encounters with giant reptiles in detail that matches perfectly with paleontological discoveries. These aren't vague myths or exaggerated legends. These are historical accounts maintained with remarkable accuracy across 50,000 years of cultural transmission. The precision of these oral histories has been confirmed repeatedly by archaeological discoveries, descriptions of Megalania size, behavior, habitat preferences, and hunting strategies found in traditional Aboriginal stories align almost perfectly with what scientists have learned from fossil evidence. This represents one of the longest continuous historical records ever maintained by human culture. But these traditional stories reveal something even more significant than simple historical accuracy. They show how profoundly the encounter with Megalania shaped early human psychology and social development. The strategies, values, and worldviews that emerged from this ancient struggle became embedded in human culture so deeply that they continue to influence our behavior today. Our instinctive response to coordinate group defense against common threats, our drive to develop increasingly sophisticated technologies, our tendency to modify environments to suit our needs rather than adapting to them as we find them. All of these fundamental human characteristics were refined and perfected during our species' confrontation with the world's most dangerous predator. The scientific study of Megalania continues to reveal new insights about this incredible creature and its relationship with early humans. Advanced imaging techniques applied to fossil remains have provided detailed information about muscle attachment points, bite force calculations, and locomotion capabilities that help explain its extraordinary hunting effectiveness. Chemical analysis of ancient bones has revealed details about Megalania diet, metabolism, and growth rates that illuminate how these massive predators maintained their ecological dominance for such an extended period. Isotope studies of tooth enamel have even provided information about seasonal movement patterns and territorial ranges. New archaeological discoveries continue to shed light on how early humans adapted to life in Megalania's world. Stone tool assemblages show increasingly sophisticated designs optimized for hunting large, dangerous prey. Fire management techniques become more complex and widespread over time. Settlement patterns reveal strategic positioning, that demonstrates detailed knowledge of predator behavior and movement patterns. Perhaps most importantly, genetic studies of modern Aboriginal Australian populations have revealed traces of the selection pressures that shaped human evolution during the period of coexistence with Megalania. Certain genetic variants that enhance reaction time, improve night vision, or increase resistance to toxins show evidence of positive selection during this crucial period in human development. The implications of these genetic findings extend far beyond simple historical interest. They suggest that the confrontation with Megalania actually accelerated human evolution in directions that improved our survival capabilities, not just against giant predators, but against environmental challenges in general. Modern conservation efforts can learn valuable lessons from the story of Megalania's extinction. The rapid disappearance of such a successful and dominant species demonstrates how quickly even the most well-adapted organisms can be overwhelmed when faced with unprecedented challenges that exceed their evolutionary experience. Climate change, habitat modification, and competition from invasive species can combine to create perfect storms that drive even apex predators to extinction faster than they can adapt. Understanding these processes helps guide conservation strategies for modern threatened species that face similar combinations of environmental pressures. But there's also hope in this ancient story. The same intelligence and adaptability that allowed humans to survive against Megalania can potentially be applied to protecting endangered species today. The techniques our ancestors developed for understanding predator behavior, managing human-wildlife interactions, and maintaining ecological balance remain relevant for modern conservation challenges. Learning to coexist with dangerous wildlife while maintaining human safety requires many of the same skills that early humans developed for surviving in Megalania's world. Understanding animal behavior patterns, using technology to reduce dangerous encounters, and developing community-based management strategies all draw on approaches that were pioneered 50,000 years ago. As we continue to uncover new evidence about Megalania and its relationship with early humans, we gain deeper insights into what makes our species unique among all life forms that have ever existed. The confrontation with this incredible predator helped forge the characteristics that define humanity. Our capacity for rapid innovation, our ability to coordinate complex group activities, our power to reshape entire ecosystems. But we also learn about the enormous responsibilities that come with such unprecedented capabilities. The extinction of Megalania serves as a reminder that human success often comes at a cost to other species and ecological systems. As we face modern environmental challenges, the lessons learned from our ancient confrontation with the world's most dangerous predator become increasingly relevant and urgent. The story of humans versus Megalania is ultimately about the power of intelligence over brute force, cooperation over individual strength, and adaptability over biological specialization. It helps explain how our species came to dominate every environment on Earth and what that dominance means for the future of life on our planet. This ancient struggle between two apex predators represents a turning point in the history of life itself. It marked the moment when biological evolution was overtaken by cultural evolution as the primary force shaping the development of Earth's dominant species. For the first time in the 4-billion-year history of life, intelligence had proven more powerful than any advantage that natural selection could produce. The legacy of this transformation continues to shape our world today. Every technological innovation, every scientific discovery, every solution to seemingly impossible challenges draws on the same fundamental capabilities that allowed our ancestors to triumph over creatures that seemed utterly invincible. Understanding this connection between our ancient past and modern capabilities provides both inspiration and guidance as we face the complex challenges of the 21st century. Climate change, resource depletion, technological disruption, and global coordination challenges all require the same combination of intelligence, cooperation, and rapid adaptation that once saved our species from extinction. The story of Megalania reminds us that no challenge is too great for human ingenuity when survival is at stake. Our ancestors proved that determination, creativity, and cooperation can overcome any obstacle that nature can devise. That lesson remains as relevant today as it was 50,000 years ago, when the fate of humanity hung in the balance in the ancient landscapes of prehistoric Australia. The transformation that occurred during humanity's struggle with Megalania didn't just change our species. It fundamentally altered the trajectory of life on Earth itself. When our ancestors first developed the ability to outthink and outmaneuver a predator that had dominated its ecosystem for over 1 million years, they crossed a threshold that no species had ever crossed before. Think about what this means from a cosmic perspective. For billions of years, evolution had been the supreme arbiter of survival. The strongest, fastest, most well-adapted creatures rose to the top of their ecosystems through biological advantages that took countless generations to develop. Then suddenly, in the span of just a few thousand years, a relatively small, physically unremarkable species rewrote all the rules. The implications of this shift are still unfolding today. Every time we develop new technologies to solve environmental problems, every time we coordinate global responses to pandemic threats, every time we push the boundaries of what seems possible, we're drawing on capabilities that were first developed in the crucible of survival against the world's most dangerous predator. But here's what makes this story even more extraordinary. The victory over Megalania wasn't achieved through some miraculous stroke of luck or singular moment of genius. It was accomplished through the systematic application of principles that remain at the core of human achievement: careful observation, strategic thinking, technological innovation, and above all, the power of cooperation. These early human communities didn't just stumble upon success. They methodically analyzed their opponent, identified its strengths and weaknesses, developed countermeasures, tested their approaches, and continuously refined their methods based on results. They created the world's first research and development programs, the first systematic approaches to problem solving under extreme pressure. The archaeological evidence reveals communities that operated with levels of efficiency and coordination that seem almost impossible for people using Stone Age technology. They managed complex supply chains, maintained extensive communication networks, coordinated multi-group operations across vast territories, and did it all while facing constant threats from creatures that could kill them instantly. This level of organizational sophistication didn't emerge overnight. It was built through generations of accumulated experience, with each successful innovation preserved and transmitted to future generations through cultural mechanisms that were themselves remarkable achievements of human ingenuity. The memory systems, teaching methods, and knowledge preservation techniques that early humans developed to maintain their anti-Megalania capabilities represent some of the most sophisticated information technologies ever created. Without writing, without permanent records, without formal institutions, they created educational systems that could transmit complex tactical, medical, and technological knowledge with perfect accuracy across hundreds of generations. Modern neuroscience is only beginning to understand how remarkable these achievements were. The human brain's capacity for storing, organizing, and retrieving vast amounts of procedural knowledge was pushed to its absolute limits during this period. Every individual in these communities became a living library of survival information that could mean the difference between life and death for their entire group. The cultural innovations that emerged from this intense, selective pressure created the foundation for all subsequent human civilization. The storytelling traditions that encoded tactical information became the basis for literature. The group coordination techniques that enabled hunting expeditions became the foundation for military organization. The resource management systems that supported extended operations became the precursors to economics. Even our most fundamental concepts of leadership, sacrifice, and moral responsibility can be traced back to the practical necessities of survival in Megalania's world. The values that we consider most essentially human were forged in circumstances where abstract philosophical concepts had immediate life-or-death consequences. The technological innovations that emerged during this period established patterns of development that continue to characterize human engineering today. The systematic approach to weapons design, the emphasis on reliability under extreme conditions, the integration of multiple technologies into comprehensive systems, all of these principles remain central to modern technological development. But perhaps most importantly, the confrontation with Megalania established humanity's relationship with the natural world. For the first time in Earth's history, a species had demonstrated that intelligence could overcome any biological advantage. This realization fundamentally changed how humans viewed their place in the natural order. No longer were we just another animal struggling to survive in a hostile environment. We had become something entirely new, a species capable of understanding, predicting, and ultimately controlling natural processes. This shift in perspective would have consequences that extended far beyond the Australian continent. The confidence gained from defeating Megalania enabled human expansion into environments that no other primate had ever successfully colonized. The Arctic tundra, high mountain ranges, dense tropical forests, arid deserts, all became habitable through the application of technologies and strategies that had been developed for surviving against the world's most dangerous predator. Each new environment presented unique challenges, but none seemed insurmountable to people whose ancestors had already solved the ultimate survival puzzle. The same analytical approaches, technological innovations, and cooperative strategies that had worked against Megalania could be adapted to work against any environmental challenge. This adaptability became humanity's defining characteristic. While other species were locked into specific ecological niches by their biological limitations, humans could modify their behavior, their tools, and even their environment to succeed virtually anywhere on Earth. The speed of human expansion following the Megalania period is unprecedented in natural history. Within just a few tens of thousands of years, humans had spread to every continent except Antarctica, adapted to every major climate zone, and begun the process of domesticating plants and animals that would lead to agriculture and civilization. This rapid expansion was only possible because the struggle against Megalania had created humans who were fundamentally different from any previous species. They possessed not just individual intelligence, but collective intelligence that could accumulate and build upon itself across generations. They had developed technologies that could be continuously improved rather than remaining static. Most importantly, they had learned that no challenge was beyond their ability to understand and overcome. The psychological impact of this realization cannot be overstated. Humans had looked into the eyes of nature's most perfect predator and emerged victorious. They had proven that intelligence, determination, and cooperation could triumph over any obstacle. This knowledge became part of human cultural DNA, shaping our species' approach to challenges for the next 50,000 years. The legacy of humanity's confrontation with Megalania lives on in every aspect of modern life. Our scientific method, our technological development processes, our approaches to education and knowledge preservation, our concepts of leadership and social organization all trace their origins back to innovations that were developed for surviving in a world ruled by giant venomous lizards. Understanding this connection helps explain both humanity's greatest achievements and our most persistent challenges. The same capabilities that enabled our ancestors to triumph over Megalania also gave us the power to reshape entire planetary systems. The intelligence that saved us from extinction also enabled us to threaten the extinction of countless other species. As we face the complex challenges of the 21st century, the lessons learned from our ancient confrontation with the world's most dangerous predator remain profoundly relevant. Climate change, resource depletion, technological disruption, and global coordination challenges all require the same fundamental capabilities that once saved our species. Careful analysis, strategic thinking, technological innovation, and above all, the power of cooperation. The story of humans versus Megalania ultimately demonstrates that no challenge is beyond human capability when we apply our intelligence systematically and work together toward common goals. Our ancestors proved that determination, creativity, and cooperation can overcome obstacles that seem utterly impossible. That lesson continues to inspire and guide us as we work to build a sustainable future for our species and our planet. In the end, Megalania's greatest legacy may not be its role as humanity's most dangerous adversary, but as the catalyst that transformed us into the extraordinary species we are today. By forcing our ancestors to develop capabilities they never knew they possessed, this incredible predator helped create the intelligence, adaptability, and cooperative spirit that define human nature. The ancient battle between humans and Megalania was more than just a struggle for survival. It was the crucible in which humanity was forged, the test that revealed our true potential as a species. We emerged from that confrontation not just as survivors, but as the inheritors of capabilities that would eventually allow us to reach for the stars themselves. That is the ultimate legacy of the most dangerous predator humans ever faced. Not fear, not trauma, but the unshakable knowledge that human intelligence, courage, and cooperation can overcome any challenge the universe presents. 50,000 years later, that knowledge